Welcome to the On the Edge podcast with your host, Scott Groves. Hey guys, it's Scott Groves here with my old friend and client, actually, Bob Merlotti, who I met years ago when I helped him with his mortgage here in LA. So I know everything about you. I know your credit and all that stuff. And Bob runs a super interesting podcast called The Fallout Lounge that does like minute to 10-minute scripted comedy. I don't even think we're allowed to call it a podcast, right? Because it's scripted. I got yelled at by a friend for calling it it's distributed through podcasts. I'd love people to subscribe, but a friend of mine said it's a show. It's not a podcast. It's a show. It's like so. It's a show. And we were talking before we went live that it's kind of like old school short Saturday Night Live skits, right? It's sketches. Yep. Sketches. Yep. That's awesome. And so tell us a little bit about the podcast, because I know your background is comedy writing for radios, writing commercials, but I'm guessing COVID maybe? How does one decide that they want to do a scripted podcast? It was before COVID, although COVID certainly, it kept me sane during COVID, doing it we try to do one a week. And partly this has to do with my mix guy, who's very good, made a lot of money in mixing in Chicago and took early retirement. So I don't want to overtax him because he's wonderful. And I want him to do it. Very good to have somebody to bounce the comedy off of, saying, is it funny? I think it's funny. Because you do want to have somebody else to do it, because it's not stand-up. You're not doing it live. It's just like a radio commercial. If you think of it, you put it together, you get it out there. You've got to feel good about it, but it's good if somebody else does too. Right. Somebody whose opinion you trust. Yeah, because we interviewed a stand-up comedian, Mike Eaton, who's, kind of making his way. And it's one of those things you can't do in a vacuum. Like, you have to be in a room bouncing your ideas off of other people for stand-up to work. So how are you sitting there at your computer in the still of your house and you're like, oh yeah, nailed it, that was funny? A lot of times you haven't nailed it, and you say, well, I'm going to stay at this until I either strangle it or we're happy and produce it. I usually will have somebody else to bounce stuff. I like to think that over time, I did a lot of radio commercials, and I was telling you earlier that worked pre-interview. Oh yeah, we had pre-interview. We're not supposed to tell anybody that. This is all totally unscripted here. I just walked in off the street, and the garage door was open, and I just walked in off the street. Yeah, no, but the pre-interview is important, because we got to the point where you told me about the joke for Obama's correspondent dinner, which we'll get to later. Yeah. But so go ahead with the scripted podcast. So, in having worked in radio, I worked for an agency that did lots of radio. They were big time. They had Super Bowl commercials, and as a matter of fact, for a while they marketed themselves as the place to go when you wanted Super Bowl commercials. So I've done a couple of Bud Light Super Bowl commercials. It's been years, but it's fun to watch. Actually, one of them I didn't see live because I was going between Super Bowl parties, but it's fun to see your thing on, and you're kind of sick of it by the time it's on the Super Bowl. It's, right. And people are, slapping you on the back, and you're like, are they just doing that because we're having nachos and beers and they want me to feel bad? But no, the agency did that, but they also did a lot of radio. And I learned from really, really good people. I got to work with really good voiceovers. I got to, people, when I didn't know anything, said, you kind of want the action to ramp up in a commercial to, if you got two people talking, then there's conflict and there's an arc and you learn, and I had an aptitude for it, but I had really good teachers as well. And you get better with it. And I just thought, well, this is a thing I'd like to do. And where did you come from? Were you classically trained? Were you a stand-up comedian? Did you have did you have a writing background, or? I always wrote. It's weird. Growing up, I always wanted to write funny stuff, and I don't know why. I think it was really influenced by Mad Magazine. And then when I saw Monty Python, my head kind of blew off, SNL is fun. People beat up on SNL, but there was a time, and I think it's when you're in high school, the time when you can't really go out. Right. And you're in, and that's why some of the stuff on SNL goes to a younger crowd, but there's a time when that's your person. It's Chris Farley. That's, whoever it is. Chris Farley was my person. John Belushi was my dad's person. It's like, if you're a man of a certain age, anywhere between 20 and probably 60, you probably have your guy. Chevy Chase was my guy. Dan Aykroyd was my guy. Yeah, I think this will probably age you, but who's your guy on SNL? Yeah, maybe Bill Murray. But Farley definitely. I actually have a good friend who was friends with. I have one of my best friends when he first moved to Chicago from Nebraska, from Columbus, Nebraska. He tended bar at the closest bar, Burton Place, closest bar to Second City. So he met all those
And for people that don't know, explain what Second City is.
Second City is an improv group out of Chicago. It's out here in LA. The Groundlings is the famous one. In Chicago, it's Second City, and I think there's a Second City here. And whatever it's a UCB type improv place where you can take classes there or whatever. But back in the day, before they started saying how can we get other revenue streams going here, they it was just that's where you got your comedy chops in sketch work. So Belushi came out of there, and Bill Murray came out of there, and Farley came out of there. So yeah, I have a good friend who was really good friends with Farley.
So are you from Chicago?
I grew up in St. Louis, and I moved to Chicago right after college.
Got it. So did you get to go see, these people perform that were coming out of Second City?
Yeah. So
and
one of the guys that I'm friends with, and I use quite a bit as a voiceover, David Pasquazi. I remember seeing him on stage at the same time as Farley, and he was every bit as funny as Farley. Just
nice,
very very tall, like 6'4" Italian guy. I've got you. We're doing a podcast. You can't see the size of my nose. When I say you got a big nose, it's impressive. Yeah. It's impressive. He's a good-looking guy, but like it's not a small, but just a great look and a great, wonderful, dry. But he's one of the funniest people I know on the planet. So I saw him on stage, and I remember, I didn't know him then, and then a couple of years later, when I was in advertising, I started working with him. I basically. I didn't even start in the creative department. And when I got into advertising at DDB, which was one of the big agencies in Chicago, I was on the account side. I had an MBA and I was on the account side, but I always wrote. I just, again, I'd grown up with all these influences. And so I thought, I'm going to get a job with Letterman. I'll get a job with, whatever. And so I put together packages, and I had a friend who had gotten a couple of interviews with Letterman. And it was it's still a good friend of mine. He was working in advertising, and he was doing very well. And I said, would you read my stuff and see, because I knew that he had done it. And when his career took off and he needed to hire somebody, he came to me. I came to him. I said, let's go get a beer because you just got a big promotion. And he said, you want to switch to the creative department? I'll sponsor you. So I didn't have a book together or whatever. I just did. So I've always kind of felt more as a comedy writer than advertising. I took advertising seriously, but it's advertising. It's stupid.
Right.
Yeah. So.
And what year was this when you got into writing? You're switching from MBA to like, all right, I'm going to give this creative thing a shot. Because I imagine there's no creativity in getting an MBA. It's like math and economics and project management.
That's where you'd be wrong.
Really?
No, for the most part, yes. But I went to Northwestern. They had a Lampoon show that they did every year called Special K. And I ended up we really didn't have a head writer, but I was a writer and director. I was in the thing. So it was a good way to, say, which one do you like? And I didn't love being up there. Like I would do it. And they had me can I curse?
Yeah, of course. Oh, no holds barred.
Yeah. Every dickhead role. It was like, I've noticed you give me all the douchebags. So I did it, and I really liked doing it, but I could see some people loved being up there, and I liked it. I just wanted to do a good job, be part of the team, be a good job. I loved writing. I loved directing. And so that was a good thing for me to pull away, because even today it's like, I'll do funny stuff and whatever, but it's like, it's not comfort level. It's just, I know people who can do something better than me as far as performance.
Right,
so
right.
It's more like that.
Stay in your lane, right?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah. So,
it's funny it's Northwestern because my all-time favorite sports writer is from Northwestern, Stuart Mandel. He writes about college football and college sports. He's written a couple books about like the debacle, which is the modern day college sports NCAA franchise.
It is a debacle.
It's a debacle.
I don't know what the debacle is, but I'm going to agree.
Yeah, because he's an alum. He's a friend of yours, but he's a great writer and has a lot of kind of comedic flair and like very, very dry comedy in his writing. So I'll have to send you some of his samplings because it's pretty good stuff. So anyway, what year is this or decade that we're doing? It's
in the first part of the 90s.
Yeah,
first part of the 90s. Yeah. I would get it and. I think when it was offered to me from my friend, it's a guy, Dennis Ryan, who's a dear friend, and I talk to him all the time. He's one of the people that I run ideas past. I'll do a script, send it to him. What do you think? Is it funny? Is it not? He'll hold his finger up to the wind, and he's always got some. You'll leave things out. There's something that needs to be explained a little more. Maybe there's a joke that you haven't thought about. He put a finish on a script the other day that I'd written. That it was the script was all done, but it's hard to get out of script sometimes, and he had just the perfect joke, and I can't tell the joke because it'll be out of context, but it was just the perfect one-word joke to end this thing, and I was like, you just made this thing perfect.
Amazing.
It was 98%. No, it was perfect. It was just, but where was I going with this? He asked if I wanted to do this, and I thought about it for not that long, and I had to take a pay cut. I take like a $15,000 pay cut to go from
big money in the early 90s.
Oh yeah. And I was doing well in account management. I was doing well. I think one of the reasons he asked me is because I was a friend to the creatives. I tried to sell the best, creative thing that we could, the thing that we all wanted to sell. I worked as hard as I could. Sometimes you sold it, sometimes you didn't, but they knew that my heart was in the right place, and I was,
Yeah. How does that work, by the way, when you say sell it? Because in my mind, everything having to do with ad agency is like Mad Men. You have two martinis, you bring in the executives, you woo them with your new cigarette campaign, and then they say, yes, let me sign on the line, which is dotted. You guys have great...
Shut up and take my money.
Yeah. That's how it always works, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, no. How does it work in the real world when you're pitching? Like, who are you pitching to? What are you selling? Like, or is it just math? I got to fill radio time. These people have this budget. Let me plug this in. Like, what does that even mean when you say I was selling the good comedy?
The good comedy. Let's see. The Mad Men was so sad to watch because it was before my time, and it's just look at the drinking and the debauchery.
You're like, why am I not 30 years older?
And in fairness, working on Anheuser-Busch, now Anheuser-Busch InBev, we got to drink a lot of beer, but not at lunch.
Right.
It wasn't. There actually was a place where the old advertising people went. I think it was called Ricardo's in Chicago, and I remember we snuck in there once, and we saw all the old people who were getting ready to retire doing 3 martini lunches, and it was just like seeing the coolest thing you ever see. Because
that was the Madman crowd.
Yeah, we didn't know that it existed. We worked on Anheuser-Busch. We could drink beer, and run it through the expense account, and it'd be fine. But not at lunch. We had too much work to do at lunch. It was just a different thing. But it was, even then, before Mad Men, we loved the idea of, the 3 martini lunch is probably a term that goes back to the 60s or the 50s or something like that. So it was fun to. Well, I think I got into the very, very end of it. So you saw little bits and pieces. There were descriptions of people saying they would get flat screen TV. Well, not flat screens, great big tube TVs for Christmas, like as a present. Which like the IRS I think wouldn't let you do that now. But
selling the comedy,
yes. It's very hard to sell comedy to somebody who is not comedic. It's really, really hard. That's why I like to talk to people who, have done it, have written it, have performed it. And you'll ask. I just did this last weekend. I said, "What's better? What's a better thing here? Ass down or face down? Ass down, right?" And the guy was like, "Yes, ass down. Clearly, ass down." It's like, and you could have done either one in the context of the thing. You could have done either one, and it's like, but you have those conversations. It's very quick, and it's kind of like. It's not that different from a math equation. It's like, does this make sense this way, or does it not make sense that way? It's very much what's the funny thing. You're not trying to make them laugh. You're trying to come up with the thing that makes it the funniest. There was it's fun to name drop. I don't care. Early on, very early this is maybe 1 year into being on the creative side. There was a product that Anheuser-Busch came out with called Bud Ice. Ice beers.
I remember Bud Ice.
Ice beers. There were dry beers and there were ice beers. There was no reason for either category. And they decided they wanted to sponsor, because it's ice beer, they wanted to sponsor the NHL and be in NHL games.
I remember this distinctly.
They wanted to be in an NHL game, which makes sense. It's Bud Ice, NHL. So it was only going to run, they wanted a super cheap commercial. Okay, because it's just hockey fans,
right?
And they wanted it to air in the between the first and second period, and between the second and third period, and that's all would ever see it. And I came up with this idea for. There used to be this guy who did play-by-play. He did color in the booth in St. Louis called Noel Picard. Noel Picard had played with the Blues. He was a goon before there were goons, and he was great. Everyone loved Noel Picard. He had a very thick French Canadian accent. Hello, friends. Today, the New York Islanders play the St. Louis Blues. And his things that he always thought that the Blues should do was either shoot the puck. Oh, they need to shoot the puck. Or get in a fight. Maybe they need to mix it up here and get in a fight. This is back when there was a lot of fighting.
This is like the John Madden of hockey.
Everyone loved Noel Picard. So I made this character that was like a journeyman player, retired, who had a sport. You know how coaches shows are great.
Yeah.
Like you just like, if that's your team, if that's a coach you like, the set always looks terrible. By the way, the set is fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
Right up the camera, it's fantastic. Yeah. But coaches shows tend not to be great looking, sets or whatever. They're kind of cheesy. And we thought we're going to make a cheesy set, and we called this thing Hockey Talk. And we're going to have this retired guy and there were 30-second commercials. We're going to do as a talk show, like we're doing here, but it was a talk show. We got, we paid $10,000 to get Marcel Dion, which at the time, he was the number 3 goal scorer of all time in the NHL. Great guy, fantastic guy, but we had no idea if he could even talk at all, and he was just wonderful. And we needed to cast the guy who ran Hockey Talk, Guy Lamond, man of the world, was what we called him. He's hosting the show, and we got a young guy out of Second City he was still living in Chicago by the name of Steve Carrell. Had done nothing,
he was a stand-up.
He was an improv guy. He was was great. It turned out he actually played hockey, and he had all the equipment, and we put like talcum powder on his temples to make him look a little older, and he was great. And we shot this on video. I said, it's got to look bad. It's got to look on video like a coach's show.
Yeah.
Like they always
old VHS, tweed sweater or something. Don't
look good. We have loud jackets, loud sweaters. I think we had him wear hockey skates the entire time just for no reason whatsoever. It's not on a hockey rink. It was just, in a studio.
Of course.
But we shot 8 of these things over 2 days. Steve was wonderful. Did a great job. Very, very fun. And then we brought it to the client, who was not a comedy fan necessarily. Now, I'd been presenting these scripts, and they bought the scripts, and they gave us money to shoot this. They gave us, I can't remember how much money. It was like $50,000 to rent a sound studio in Chicago and shoot these things over a couple of days. So they liked the idea quite a bit.
And I love that you gave Steve Carrell $10,000 and kept his career alive probably for a couple extra years. Because if you're a struggling stand-up comedian, that's probably $10,000 is big fucking money.
I don't think it's $10,000. I don't know what it was. It was like whatever the standard. He was probably in SAG, whatever the standard SAG rate was, is what we paid. But it might have been. But I'm
going to say you are personally responsible for The Office. We're going to go ahead and give you credit for that.
I can take credit for other things that I didn't do as well.
Perfect. Yes. We'll give you credit for a lot of stuff during the show.
Anyway, we presented the rough cuts, which were basically we shot it as 30-second spots. We tried to time it out, and there was very little editing, whatever. We had a little joke. He pushed button, it's not hockey without ice, but ice, and he did a wonderful French Canadian accent, which I won't try to do. Brought it to the client, and the client said, "It's not funny." The client actually said, "You were funnier when you presented them," and both myself and my friend who had directed this, like one of the creative director, Dennis Ryan, had directed the stuff. It was very much on a shoestring. Said, "Oh no, he's funny. He's really funny. He's really, really funny."
So now we can give you, Bob Merlotti, credit for being funnier than Steve Carrell.
No, I didn't accept it then. I won't accept it now. I can read a script, but
right.
But it's not. I probably told him it's like Noel Picard, which would have made sense in St. Louis. Everyone knew Noel Picard. Bless his memory, the great Noel Picard. But anyway, so there's things like that where it's when you're with the Fallout Lounge, when you're doing it for yourself, you don't have that.
Right.
You're the client. So if you think it's funny, and it's not funny, then it's your fault. And there's been a couple that I'm like, I don't think there's anything that did bomb. Now you're not up on stage. You're doing it, put it together, and you can cheat things. You can put a sound effect in. You can say, "Give me something," but it's like it's better if you just try to make it really funny to start with,
right?
And then you can go up, but you can't go too far down.
There are certain things though that give people weird permissions to laugh, right? Like that's why sitcoms still have a laugh track. because like they're giving you the permission to laugh. And I didn't notice that. This is how ignorant and oblivious I am. I did not notice that TV shows had a laugh track until I was watching Arrested Development. And I was like, there's just something about that show that's like off. Like the comedic timing doesn't feel right to me. Like I know the show is good and I want to watch the next show, but something isn't landing like in my gut. And one of my friends who was a comedian, he's like, yeah, there's no laugh track. I'm like, what do you mean there's no laugh track? He's like, yeah, go watch Seinfeld. Every time they tell a joke, there's a laugh track that pops in, even though there's not a live studio audience there per se. And that's giving you permission to laugh. And I'm like, oh, so the production value actually matters.
Yes. And sometimes it's not a laugh track. Sometimes it's I just was reading this the other day. Cheers, one of the great, most successful sitcoms of all time. They used to get complaints that the laugh track was too loud. And so they actually came out and said, and started announcing Cheers is filmed in front of a live audience.
I remember that.
They didn't have a laugh track. People were just laughing that hard. That was a thing.
I remember this would have been the 80s, early 90s. A lot of these shows would be like filmed in front of a live studio audience. Cheers. And then the dun 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 dun. Yeah. I love that show, by the way. There's 3 shows from my childhood that I was old enough to watch, which was Wonder Years. Mm-hmm. All-time probably favorite show. And then the other 2 was Quantum Leap and Cheers. I remember I would beg my father to let me stay up because I think like Quantum Leap was probably on at 9 and Cheers was on at 10. And at like however old I was, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, I just knew these shows were great. Like Quantum Leap was great science fiction, and Cheers, even though I didn't get half the jokes when I'm a preteen, I just knew it was funny. And I would beg my parents to let me stay up to watch that show. And maybe one night a week they would just give in and they would quit. They just didn't want to hear me bitch anymore. And I would stay up and watch Cheers. And to this day, it's like I have nostalgic attachment to that because, of my parents, but it's so funny. It holds up so well.
It holds up. If you look at it now, and if anybody listening, if you know Cheers, if you don't know Cheers, watch the pilot to Cheers, which I think exists on YouTube. It's the perfect pilot. It sets up, it's like a great episode. You have to introduce all the characters. You've never seen them before. You learn that Sam Malone owns the bar and he's a recovering alcoholic. It's not maudlin. It's within. There's a joke in there. You see how Diane Chambers, who's going to be his love interest, how she's stuck there and she has an aptitude for for being a waitress. She remembers a bunch of drinks at one point. So it's like she wants to do something else. She has an attitude. She's very educated and Sam is not, or whatever. And it's one of the best pilots ever done. Pilots are really, really hard. I've got a bunch of unsold pilots sitting around, and it's really tough because you have to introduce all the premise and the characters. You have to get everybody introduced, and you need to make it entertaining, and it's hard to do.
And there's nobody in that show that still doesn't embody who they were on that show. I see Woody Harrelson in a movie today. Yeah, I still think he's that dumb bartender, right? Yeah, and it's like Cliff Clavin will always be Cliff. Maybe one of the best TV characters of all time.
You know what? He and George Wendt both weren't supposed to be character, like they weren't supposed to be big character. I think they were in the pilot, but they don't do very much or whatever. And I'm gonna butcher his name because I want to say Cliff Clavin. John, is it Ratzenberger?
Yeah, Ratzenberger.
Okay. I believe it's correct that he said to the people with the show, he said, in Boston, and I think they picked Boston because there weren't a lot of sitcoms that have been set in Boston, or a lot of shows that have been set in Boston. He said, in Boston, every bar seems to have some know-it-all, who doesn't necessarily know it. Like he could be inaccurate, but just thinks that he knows it all. And they were like, huh. So that he kind of came,
Oh, that's right. We'll edit out the dogs. This is proof to everybody that we actually film in my garage and we're up here. Yeah, there you go. Laugh track. We're gave you permission to laugh. There we go. Now we got the permission for the laugh track. This is proof that we don't have anything profestional going on.
That wasn't bothering me. You saw how I went after your dog. It's like if there's a dog,
yeah, exactly.
I wish I had a treat on me. But no, John Ratzenberger. I think he told them there's this type of person who tends to be in bar, and it is. I have a dear friend who we refer to sometimes as the Cliff Clavin of our friend group.
It's amazing.
Yes, because he is the guy who says, the greatest. He wouldn't mind if I said this. We were in New Orleans once. Guys trip, 5 guys. We decided, let's go down to New Orleans, drink beer and watch college football. And we picked a weekend where none of our teams were, none of us were going to our games. So we went down and, I'm watching Mizzou. My one friend is watching Georgia. Another one's watching Michigan. Another one's watching Nebraska. And we're having fun in New Orleans. And at one point, we're walking around just having, we're in the French Quarter, having a great time. And the architecture is gorgeous and the people are fun and whatever. And my buddy Paul says, New Orleans is the most European city in the world. And to this day, that's his name. Now to his credit, he claims it. He hugs that quote to his chest and says, it is. It's the most European city in the world.
That's amazing. Yeah. This show's a little bit before my time, Taxi. But I remember, I don't know who the character was. There was a know-it-all in Taxi, and there's this line that I've just held on to. I know I didn't see it live because, again, Taxi was before my time, so I must have seen it on a, Nick at Night replay where the guy goes, they're talking about something, and he goes, oh, population of Chile, 5 million. And everybody looks at him like he's a genius, and he's like, really? And he's like, well, if you don't know the answer, then clearly I'm correct. And I'm like,
and he is.
Exactly right. And I've held on to that because
before the internet. It's like, but before the internet, for anybody listening who did not live before the internet, if you spit something like that out and
with confidence, with gusto,
and you don't have an encyclopedia, which I don't think exists anymore. Now it's Wikipedia. That would be the answer.
Right.
That's the answer. Until somebody had time to go to a library, it's like that was the answer.
That's the answer. I mean, it's great. Like, it's kind of sad because you can't get away with anything anymore, right?
No.
Like, I know you're a single guy. You can't be at a bar and be like, oh yeah, I'm Bob Merlotti. I write for The Simpsons. They're just gonna fact check you immediately. You still do that. Okay.
Well, I pick a more obscure show than The Simpsons. Of course. Yeah.
That's good stuff. Well, let's just talk about that quickly. What is the single life like during COVID? Because thank God I have a wife and kids, and I'm just stuck here swimming and having a good time at our house. But
I'm the wrong person. I've always been awful at dating. I think I've been told,
all your girlfriends would probably agree.
Yeah. I don't feel the single life during COVID. It was weird because you're not. All the dating, that was the thing that changed in my dating life for a lot of people, where it became, there's no stigma attached. I'm old enough to remember when it was like, do you really want to go to a dating app? It's better just to go into a bar and just get pie-eyed and pass out, and girls dig that.
Yeah, clearly.
So the idea of now it's a dating app and you're not going to see each other in person, and the dating apps tried to stay ahead of it and say, oh, are you comfortable with online dating? And you're like, I guess, you don't even know what that is, like, or non-contact dating,
like a Zoom date or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was some weird socially. We were all freaked out at the very beginning. I think the most depressed I was the entire time was, remember when that Sad Sack guy did the video where this is how you disinfect your groceries. Do you remember this thing? Mm-hmm. And I did it, I think 1.5 times. The second time through, I was like, no, if I die from this cantaloupe, that's it.
It's over.
But there was a lot of that in dating where it's like, I can go get coffees open and we can get coffee, and you stand over there and I stand over. By the way, my feeling for the greatest dating app ever would be, or the dating service, I'll call it, ever, would be, because this is how superficial humans are. You get a clean city street with a sidewalk. I'm gonna go with a man and a woman here, So no judgment, or however you want to.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, but like two different people. You'd walk past each other, and then you come back the other side, and there'd be somebody from the service to intercept you and say, yes or no. That's it. You walk past each other each way on the sidewalk, and at the end of it, you decide you're going to do it or you're not going to do it.
I mean, that's kind of what the swipe right, swipe left thing is, right? Like, I remember in the good old days when I was dating in the 90s and the early 2000s, if I walked by a really attractive girl, I would just, about face and run up and be like, hey, I'm Scott, would you be interested in dinner? And most of the time they would say no, and half the time they would politely say no and say that they had a boyfriend. But once in a blue moon, they'd say yes. And I went on some great dates that way, but I like this idea.
Yeah.
This is the old school swipe right, swipe left.
Yeah. I don't know anything about anything. So dating wise.
So maybe this can make it into one of your comedy sketches at some point. Girlfriend of mine, very lovely, very attractive lady. She was doing a lot of COVID dating because she's out of a relationship like right before the lockdown. And she's like, Scott, it's kind of weird because like I'm doing these Zoom dates. So like I see a picture of the guy, he's good looking enough. Then we do like 3 or 4 Zoom dates. And she's like, let's be honest. I'm not a prude. By date 4 or 5, like if I know, I'm ready to fuck. She's like, but the problem is like we haven't actually met each other in person yet. Right. So the first like in-person date at date 5 or 6, am I asking for a COVID test and an STD test? Do I have to do 4 online dates and then 4 in-person dates? And now I'm not fucking till like date 8?
Yes.
Because she's like, by date 4, I know whether or not I'm sleeping with you. And I'm like, yeah, that's a good point. She's like, but then I also feel like a whore because I'm sleeping with him the first time I meet him in person. And I'm like, that is quite the dilemma. What'd you do? And she's like, I slept with him, of course.
Yeah,
and I'm like, good for you.
God bless her.
Yeah. Feminist liberation. Good job. Yeah, maybe I'll set you up with her. All right. So you make this switch in the 90s, which still kind of blows my mind because I don't care how much extracurricular writing you did in high school. The fact that you went from an MBA, project management, business, finance to like, no, I much rather write comedy. I'm like, that doesn't seem like a good career move.
It didn't seem like a good career. No, I thought about it. I mean, going into Northwestern's for the MBA program is a big marketing school. It always do when they do the rankings, and they split it up by a little thinner slices, and they do it by marketing. It blows the other ones away because that's their emphasis. Okay, so it's a top.
Doesn't make sense
no matter what. So I was already in marketing. I mean, the easy thing to say is that I should have gone to grad school. That's the pat answer. But it's like I believe me, I have thought of that, and I mean, it was a good thing to do, and I learned a lot. And there's things you still apply,
right?
To I made a reference to the tragedy of the commons to a friend of mine who was talking about overfishing or using resources or whatever, and he says, "What's that?" I said, "I'll send you a thing." And it's like.
Send you the Wikipedia page.
Now you have an MBA from Northwestern because that's the kind of shit that they would. So the theory stuff, the 30,000 foot theory stuff about mainly marketing, because that was my main thing or whatever. But I already had made kind of like not a great financial career move by going into advertising versus brand management, because my friend I've got a very dear friend from the Bay Area. Came to Chicago, loved Chicago, but he always said, I'm going to go back to the Bay Area. So the gorgeous area, why not? Moved back out, and he was the chief operating officer at Clark's. He was always the CEO. It was between him and one other person, and then he took his giant stock options or whatever, and did the heck with it. But he was an example of what you could do, and he was obviously very successful. But if you went into corporate or the brand management side of things as opposed to advertising, was more, it had this creative side to it. But I think I always thought I didn't get into advertising thinking I'm going to end up being a copywriter at all.
Right.
I got into it thinking this is a good mix of marketing and creativity. And
nice. And what is brand management? I'm not even familiar with that.
Brand management is what's
I have some Target bubbly water ripoff.
I'm looking for a brand name.
Like Nike. Nike's one of my favorite brands.
Nike. I'm thinking for something smaller. It's a brand of toothpaste.
Tom.
Lysol. There's
Lysol.
a Lysol disinfectant spray over there. There is someone at the Lysol company, which is maybe it's Procter and Gamble. I don't know what I'd have to look at the label. Who is the main brand manager on Lysol? Now, there's probably a company that owns Lysol. It owns
Johnson & Johnson, whatever.
Johnson & Johnson. They have a zillion different things, but they'll get some smart person out of it. Could be Northwestern. It could be an MBA program. It usually is somebody with an MBA to just run Lysol. And I was talking about Anheuser-Busch earlier with Bud. There was somebody who worked. Obviously, Bud Light is a little more high profile. Budweiser, super high profile, even though it was it's the king of beers.
Yes.
But it was also like on the way down I worked on Bud Light when it was on the way up. Now they're both on the way down. But there would be someone assigned who was the head person on each one of those accounts, and that's I believe Procter and Gamble started that. They were the ones who started that. Don Draper, if he were here, would say to the detriment of advertising, because it used to be, before brand management, the advertising people like Don Draper and like his cohorts were the people who kind of ran the brand. And then the brand started to say, well, we don't want to, these fly by night, Draper seems like he drinks a lot and sleeps around a lot. Let's do it ourselves or whatever. And so you ended up with people who, weren't necessarily good at the creative side, but they ran the brand, and they would look at all the distribution and how many facings, which is how many times you see it in a store. If you see 3 of a product, 3 jars of Skippy, that's 3 facings of Skippy. So all that stuff, someone would manage that. That's a brand manager.
So in some ways, that's good. That's good. I like the brand manager. In some way, they're dealing with the psychology of how their product is perceived by the marketplace, right? They want Lysol to be the safety brand and the brand you turn to when you don't want your kids to get the flu or whatever. Are they driving that message, or is that still people on the advertising side?
In theory, it's I think that, and it's different because there's been a talent drain in advertising.
Why is that? You can give us the sarcastic, angry version, by the way, if you want.
Yeah, I'm trying to think why. Certainly on the account management side was what I came up. That was the other thing that I was seeing. It used to be in account management, you were responsible for all the client, every day, taking their temperature or whatever. You were you kind of were the hub of the wheel, where you helped to bring the creative to the client and make it palatable to the client, because if something's bold, client doesn't want to, like, you do a little, I used to call it front door sell. Like you call the client who was your friend the night before the meeting and go, we're going to show you this one spot. Okay. Creatives love it. It's got the word, dork in it, so it got something that you're not, there was the language changed or whatever. There was a time like now you could say dork or whatever, but there's, like, what would be the word now that you couldn't say, it's like,
right.
So, and you'd soften them up to sell it. You did that. You did media. You were in charge of media. I remember, placing spots on, beer spots on Monday Night Football. Oh, this is a good spot. I'm going to run this in the first quarter and at halftime because it's so funny. And maybe at the end of the game, because you had a limited amount of stuff. So you did media and media planning. And then there was research as well. Media went away. Media planning went away. So agencies just got the media. They didn't have any say in what they got. It's just like, you're going to be on such a show. If it's beer, it's probably sports and late night, whatever
21 to 30-year-old men are watching.
Yeah. Something like that. Research and strategy. Strategy used to be a thing that you did in account management. That kind of that went away, and clients took more of that, and so the account management just became you're kind of a project manager a little bit, like what needs to be done and whatever. So it made sense to me because I could kind of see that happening when the offer was made to me to go on the creative side. I had aspirations to write, but not necessarily in advertising. But once it was presented to me, by a friend saying, and he didn't say you're going to have to take a pay cut. He didn't know. It's like at the higher level, they're like, he's going to have to take a pay cut, because they don't want to encourage people to do this, So,
right.
That was, I was kind of starting to see that kind of thing on account management, that I was like, you're going to have to make the leap to something else. And some people go to the brand management side. They go, I'm going to go work for Lysol. I know a lot of people who've done that, where they end up, doing very well for themselves, going the other side. The guy there's a guy who's in a, I don't want to say he's retired because I don't know for sure that he is, but there was a guy who I briefly worked for at on the advertising side, a guy named Bob Lackey, who became the CMO of Anheuser-Busch, the head of marketing for Anheuser-Busch.
Seems like a pretty good job.
Yes, and he oversaw a lot of great stuff, and And so he was a good example of somebody who made the leap, like saw. I don't know if he, and I don't, he's actually friends with my brother, but I don't know if he saw where it was going or whatever, but he decided this is a really good move for me. And he was very much a Chicago guy, and he had moved to St. Louis, but ended up doing all the Real Men of Genius stuff and all the, the big Super Bowl ads that Anheuser-Busch did so well with. Like he oversaw a lot of that. What's Up? I remember the first time I saw What's Up, I had just left DDB, and I was like, Jesus, look at this. And it actually was based on a short film, a guy's named Charles Stone, I think, that it had done, and they adapted it for Budweiser, but it was still brilliant to say, I'm going to adapt this thing for Budweiser. It's, so Bob Lackey oversaw all that stuff. So, but he had a creative background. So
what, I mean, this is the $1 million, maybe $1 billion question. What makes a good 30-second or 60-second ad? Is it Bob sitting in his hotel room writing stuff that you've thought about before? Or is it like when they write sitcoms where you get a team of writers around a table and you bounce jokes off each other? Like, what does it take to come up with a 60-second awesome Bud Light commercial? And by the way, this is going to be one of the clips for sure. Because I want to know what it takes to make a 30 or 60-second awesome Bud Light commercial.
First of all, there's no such thing in TV as a 60-second commercial for Bud Light. It was always 30 seconds.
All right, so 30 seconds seems like nothing.
It's nothing. So you have to be very economical in your comedy. It's something you learn over time. I think like everybody else, not everybody, but when I got into writing, you tend to, when you're doing television, I'm not talking about podcasting or radio or anything like that, you tend to overwrite the words. The more you cram in there, this is not from me, but it's a good way to look at it. If you're in a bar and you're watching a game and the sound's off, so there's a lot of bars like this. The Greyhound in Highland Park, where I live, they every Dodger game, but the sound is off and they're playing music. And a spot comes on, 30 seconds, and you can follow it and like it. That's a great spot. It doesn't always have to be. There are exceptions to all these things, and there's things where it's wall-to-wall copy and it's very funny, But it is a good way to look at doing TV advertising, that if you can eliminate as many words as you can, that's a good thing. And trust the visuals to carry it. And when you get good at that, it's harder to sell it because you're describing visuals to somebody who just wants. Clients, brand managers want all the words. They want Lysol will disinfect. If I just read off the label there, that's what they want in the commercial. They want wall to wall, everything that Lysol does. It kills 99% of germs. It smells nice. It won't hurt your kids. It won't kill your dog.
Yeah.
They want all those things, and you get to really, in 30 seconds, pick one thing. One thing. What do you want to say? This is the tangiest mustard. Whatever the one thing. What's a good example? Volvo. What do you think of when you think of Volvo?
Safest car out there for soccer moms. Safe. That's it.
Safe. They've been beating safe into our heads since I remember Volvo ads.
Yeah.
Right?
BMW, ultimate driving machine.
Absolutely. And they used to, and they would break it down more than that. BMW, say, and I worked on BMW at Gray on the West Coast. We won the Western dealer account. I originally did, before we won the business, they had a little session where they kind of saw, are you kind of in the range of where you need to be? And I did some stuff about that. They have great technology in the car, right? So I was talking about something that it had to do with the creature comforts or the climate control or something like that. And in a very nice way, they said, and this was great for me. I was grateful that they did this. They said, we're about performance, luxury performance. So they want you to drive these are the kick-ass cars, but the luxury comes in like what the car can do, not how you feel when you're in, like, when you're driving by a cow pasture, can you dial out the cows? That's not what they do. They were a little reticent to say how fast they'd go, but like cornering or getting out of trouble. They were very good about They didn't like, they had passive, you're surrounded by airbags like every other car, but they loved the idea of active safety. That this is going to get you out of trouble. If you're stuck between two trucks, two 18-wheelers.
Hit the gas.
But even like there was a lot of things where like basically it was a cone ad, but it would show somebody in trouble, and it was usually somebody who you wouldn't think, it's a housewife and there's kids in the back, not housewife, a woman who had kids in the back, and she doesn't look like she's she's not driving NASCAR, but all of a sudden it's like boom, 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 she's out of trouble, and she breathes a sigh of relief. That's BMW. That's the car. We actually, when we won, I can use this because it's a zillion years ago. We won the BMW account, and after learning all this stuff, I came up with a campaign that as much as anything else, we never did it, but it might have helped to win the account, called Whatever Comes Up. Because the idea, when I talked to them, I was like, oh, it's BMW's kind of run by engineers. I was like, oh, this is a great car that does these incredible things. And they would kind of make fun of cars that had too cushy of seats. They didn't want the seats to be too cushy. They wanted you to be connected to the road and be alert or whatever. So I did this campaign called Whatever Comes Up. And the idea was whatever came up, and I did some absurdist things. You're attacked by ninjas, or, impressionist art like starts flying up in the road. But it was basically like a cone test that you're driving in between the impressionist art. But they didn't do it, but they liked it a lot because that meant that we got the brand. We understood that, like, you don't know what's going to come up. And I said, okay, I can push that to an absurdist area where absurd things come up, not funny, but absurd, that you're never going to come up. But the idea was whatever comes up, you'd rather be in a BMW than, any other, pick your car, Lexus or, Mercedes or anything like that. You want to be in this because this is the one that's going to be performance luxury.
Yeah, which is funny because when I think of Volvo, I'm like, oh, a Volvo is a tank. You could take a head-on collision and live.
Right.
But I guess I'd rather be in a car where I can just avoid anything that comes up and swerve out of the way, right?
Yeah, and I don't know if it's the same. It used to be that what they told me was that if there's any kind of a passive safety innovation, I'm sure it's way past this now, but one of the things was airbags on the side. I was used to airbags. They started putting them where they surrounded you with airbags. If there was anything that they actually could prove that would be good, they used to share. They said, we feel it is morally our obligation to share it with. It was very something you wouldn't expect from a company, but they're also they're still independently owned, so they that's what they do it.
Interesting. But
I think that's also just the auto industry.
Yeah, and you're talking about obviously visual ads, so commercial, TV, billboard, outdoor. I know you got your start in radio. How different is it when you only have words to work with? Because I'm sure there's a different cadence. Like, visually, I can watch a BMW commercial with no words, and I get it. Fast car going through the slalom, but you can't just have 30 seconds of dead airspace and then say BMW, the ultimate driving machine. So right. What is it like when you're doing radio ads? Because I know that was your specialty for a long time, also. Yeah,
and I kind of did both, but I think it's directionally you're accurate that they wanted. Radio's not as glamorous as TV. I loved it then, love it now, whatever. TV, you got more. I don't know what they're doing.
There you go.
More people know what they're doing. But it's when I started, radio was always 60 seconds. You have to. I'm going to use a cliche that maybe your listeners haven't listened to, but in advertising it's a cliche. Theater of the mind was what it was called. But you have to set up whatever the. If there was something visual you needed to see, and when I'm doing my sketches, it's like if there's something you need to know, you need either say it or you need to surround it with a sound effect or whatnot. That is like, I am here now, and you learn to do that early on in whatever the radio thing is. That is like, I know where I am and now, and the fun thing is, things that would be really expensive. If you want to send somebody over the Niagara Falls in a barrel in a radio spot, it's no more expensive than if you do it in TV, and you either send them over in a barrel or you've got special effects to do, right? So it's very fun that way because you just need to establish we're at Niagara Falls.
Yeah. Some swooshing falls coming over.
Scott Groves is going to go over the barrel. Scott, how do you feel? And I believe I wrote a spot for Klondike bars once where somebody wrote an inflatable sex doll over the Niagara Falls.
Yes.
For a Klondike bar.
I like this.
What would you do for a Klondike bar? Inflatable sex doll over.
I like that Klondike would let you get that sassy.
That's what I think they asked for it. They had been using the what would I do for a Klondike bar for years, and they wanted. The weird thing with Klondike bars is the target, as I remember, it was guys your age who are married. It was like guys who were like responsible. They've got families. They got kids. So,
but they want to end the day with an ice cream.
They want to have a nice ice cream. God, people, give us something. Give us this Klondike bar. This kind of cheap ice cream in a waxy shell. Give us that.
I will never forget those commercials. What would you do for a Klondike bar? Like, absolutely. I mean, it sticks in my brain. As soon as you said that, I could picture a dozen commercials in my head. As soon as you said that,
that was. I assume they still do lots of advertising. I think they just run with that. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean,
so when I worked on it, it was a freelance assignment, and they just said, "Can you push it even further?" And it's like,
yeah, we can go real crazy here. I feel like we could do like a whole comedy shtick just like on the real crazy stuff.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we could get real nasty, but yeah, that's fascinating. That's fascinating. And it's funny because when you listen to radio, to your point, if you've got to go film out in the middle of Yosemite, that's a big expensive budget. But if they start a radio commercial with some crickets in the background and then you just tell you you're in Yosemite, I just need some outdoor noises and you tell me I'm in Yosemite and I will picture being in the middle of Yosemite.
You can say I'm in Yosemite. That's 2 seconds?
Yeah.
It's, and then there's a matter, I want to hear a moose in the background. It's like, okay, there's a moose or a ram or, whatever.
Does anything stick out from that time when you were working for the bigger agencies before you went fully freelance where it's like, man, I'm really proud of that commercial segment, that campaign, or like, man, I can't believe they gave us money for that dog shit.
There were, I've always, I don't know why, I'm always more impressed if somebody else does something than if I do something like one of the things that I stopped and I thought, well, that was nice. That was like impressive. When I started in the creative side, I started on, and I kind of thought, okay, I'm taking a pay cut, but it's on Bud Light. I think, and I ended up working on Bud Light and Budweiser because we got both of them, whatever. So it was like there were different groups, again, different brand managers you're dealing with or whatever. But the first year that I was working on beer, on Bud Light, you do spots and you turn it in and they go down and sell them and your things would sell or it wouldn't, again, and your things would sell or it wouldn't. Well,
so just real quick, if you get the Bud Light contract, they're not just saying, all right, you got the contract, you got carte blanche to do the commercials. You and a bunch of other creative people are writing commercials, and then it still has to go somebody for final approval. It's like,
yes,
you could write all day long and never see the light of day.
Someone like the person who said that Steve Carrell was not funny is evaluating whether they want to go with this or not. So and in fairness, some of these people were pretty good, but they weren't as good as the people writing the commercials. They weren't. They, like I always wanted to take them aside and sometimes did and say, these people are hysterical. You can think I'm an idiot, but you've got to think Dennis is great and Craig is great and Barry is great and John is great, and they knew it and whatever. I think they fell into a pattern of you see so much comedy when you're I'm gonna present 15, 20 Super Bowl Bud Light spots for you. It's hard. It's it's like you're trying to pick the best one, and it's usually not obvious or whatever. But no, in doing this stuff, there was the first round we were doing, like one round was just it was the Super Bowl round. I don't even know if they said it was a Super Bowl round. You're just trying to write funny Bud Light commercials, but it was getting near that time. And within a year when I started in the creative department, I had a spot on the Super Bowl. That was one of the spots. And like it is impressive, but I'm working on Bud Light. It's my job to come up with stuff. It happens to be that's, you know what I mean? It's like,
right.
You know, I knew I was both good enough to do it, but also fortunate to be in the situation where you could do it.
So what was your Bud Light commercial that made the cut?
The one you would know, the one that actually the first one I did, it did pretty well, and it ran for a couple of years. It was about an ugly dog that won a dog show by bribing the judges with a Bud Light. The one you would, I don't know if you'd remember. This would have been like 2000, so this is 20 years ago. It was It was actually two guys went into a grocery store, and they have like a debit card or whatever. They've got enough money for either Bud Light. They don't have money. They thought they had money. They don't have money. They start getting rid of stuff, and the clerk is like going, "You don't have enough." And it gets down to toilet paper and Bud Light, and they look, and you know, it's a bad. I think Rough Choice was the name of the commercial. Actually, it was, you know, they don't have, and they decide to go with the Bud Light. And then joke is that the bag boy says paper or plastic. They go paper. They immediately say paper, and it did very well in the Super Bowl, and it ran for a long time or whatever. So and they didn't want to do. And by the way, that one, August Bush the Fourth greenlit it, but that languished. We wrote it. I had everything except the paper or plastic joke, and when my my partner at the time came up with that, I said that's the spot, and I literally got my boss in said, listen to this as it is with paper or plastic. He goes, that's a perfect ending. But then it languished for 3 or 4 years because they didn't want to do it because they thought, could you make it less about wiping your ass? And it's like, that's the joke.
Yeah, that's the punchline.
And we never say wipe your. It's implied, you know. But eventually it got made. But that's what you're going up against, because it's like the average person would go like, that's just a funny joke, but they're like, oh, it's.
Does that really represent our brand? Yeah. And you know, this is interesting just because you have some.
Of course it does.
Yeah, of course it does. Of course it does. Because everybody who buys Bud Light also has had to make that decision. Do I buy the 24 pack or do I?
Shits.
They all take shits. Yes. Exactly. I remember a time in the Army, and I will never forget. On payday, my roommate and I in the Army, we could afford, because this was like, you would pretty much in the Army drink whatever you could get your hands on.
Yeah.
But on payday, we could afford a 1.75 liter bottle of Bacardi, 2 12 packs, because they didn't have 24 packs for some reason, 2 12 packs of Diet Coke, and like a $10 $1 menu run at Burger King. So we get like 10 items on the $1 menu for Burger King. It was probably a $19.99 bottle of Bacardi, you know, 2 liter bottle, and probably $8, a handle, and like $5 to $8. You know, it's like, this is what we could come up with on payday and still pay our bills. And I remember it was a big deal. And like, sometimes, you know, if your account was in the negative, I was looking at his buddy, I was like, well, do we just drink the Bacardi and no Diet Coke? And he'd be like, well, what else can we cut it with? You know, It's just like every broke male who's buying Bud Light has made that decision at some point.
Yes.
So it's genius. But no, what I was going to say is, in this brand management, you know, whatever, you know, we just went through a crazy year with the riots and COVID and Black Lives Matter. And now we're in Pride Month. And so, you know, every app on my phone has changed their image to the gay pride.
It's the least amount that they could.
It's like the lowest lying fruit to pretend they care.
Yes, to pretend they care. I'm going to do it so every logo, yes.
So in the brand management stuff, there's certain brands, right? Like Nike sponsors a lot of black athletes. It makes sense to me for them to go all in on the Black Lives Matter message and Black History Month and whatnot. But when I get a template email from, like, the most egregious one was International Watch Company, IWC. They make somewhere between $5,000 and $100,000 watches for waspy, rich, mostly European or white men. When I get their form email that says, we stand with Black Lives Matter, I'm like, eat a dick, guys. You guys are not the brand that's closely aligned with the plight of the African American movement in America. So like, this brand stuff just drives me bonkers.
But I was just talking to somebody about brands aligning with Juneteenth, because I didn't know, like, this thing just passed.
Right.
This thing just passed. And I didn't know, like, I thought, okay, it's a federal holiday. Does that mean Okay, so that means the post office is closed and Congress is closed and federal employees aren't working. But what does it mean for somebody who works for a corporation? Like I literally didn't know because it flew through Congress.
Right.
I hadn't really heard that it was up, and then it went through, and I did, like, it's just like Columbus Day. Things are open on Columbus Day, like
right.
And Columbus might go away too. But,
and all the Italians are taking a day off, but
But I literally didn't know what it was, and no, I knew what Juneteenth was. I didn't know if this is going to be a thing that's going to be like Memorial Day where everybody's off.
Yeah, or Martin Luther King Day where everything's shut down.
Because I just thought it seems odd that something flew through, and my guess is what will happen, and this is going to answer your question, I think, to the high-end watch company that plays. It's a defensive position on some of these places that it's like they don't want to be called out on. I don't want to say that corporate America is made up of cowards. Corporate America is made up of cowards.
Total cowards.
Yes. And so they don't want to get in trouble and forget about race or pride or anything. They don't want to get in trouble with, and the bigger they get or whatever. I'll give you an example of, this isn't getting in trouble, but this is something, because it works both ways.
Right.
This is probably a 10-year-old not an argument, but a 10-year-old thing that you would see. There were brands that would not see a mixed race couple. Okay. And then there were brands that you would see a mixed race couple. And what it was, brands like IKEA would say, we want to be seen by people who live in cities, who are affluent, who are college educated, as being more progressive, more progressive. And so they would go out of their way to show a mixed race couple, where I've worked for some giant companies that were like, we're ready for it. We don't know if our base of our consumers is yet, which is a cowardly thing, right?
Right.
So to the credit of the IKEAs of the world, younger brands were like, we'll take that and we'll run with that. And that's how, and I think that's kind of healthy in the marketplace too. That's how they grow. That's how they get ahead of it, because it's like, I say, hey, I'm a young person and I have no problem with, I'm going to buy an IKEA thing, versus going to some other place or whatever. But I think a lot of it is just defensive posture on a lot of things. And it's like, I never like to see defensive postures on the part of brands. It's just,
It feels weird. Like, one of my favorite people to watch boxing with is my buddy Dan. And Dan happens to be gay, but he comes from a Mexican family, huge boxing, just like it's in their blood. Like, we watch boxing. He knows more about boxing than any dude I've ever met. But when DAZN, DAZN, which is now the new pay-per-view app, instead of paying per view for each individual event, you just get DAZN and then, you get all your pay-per-views. When they changed their app to the rainbow color and whatnot, he was just like, we were talking about it. And it's like, boxing still to this day, the most alpha male, predominantly, Hispanic and kind of Cuba and whatnot, not exactly the most progressive communities in the world. So like, when they change their app and everything to the rainbow flag and whatnot, I'm like, I don't care. It doesn't bother me, but it just feels like pandering. Like, that's probably not your total audience. And by the way, the gay audience that is watching boxing, they don't care whether or not you support pride or not. They're just like, so. I just want to watch boxing.
I think it's the least you can do, and I don't think it's fooling anybody.
Right.
It's like this year, I think I really noticed that it's like every logo I've ever seen. Because you notice, like, you used to see a logo in certain colors, and then when it's the pride colors, you just notice that. But it seems like this year it's everybody, and it does seem like pandering, but it also is like, I'm not mad about it. You're not mad about it. It's
I could care less.
And I understand if these brands are like, do we want to get an angry letter? Do what and some people are gonna like it. You're gonna get a letter for everything.
Right.
You're gonna get everything you do. You're gonna get a letter for. But it's like, a lot of it, they're not trying to think what's the greatest. It's why usually admire, I'm trying to think of brands that have done it for a long time. Nike overall has done it pretty well for a long time, where they're trying to take a step. I remember when they went with Kaepernick as a spokesperson, I thought that's so smart, because again, who's buying lots of Nikes? Not an old dude like me.
Right.
Young people are buying lots of Nikes, and for younger people, Kaepernick is a great spokesperson to.
And you know what I did like about that, them being brave, even if I completely disagree with the message, I mean, politically, if I completely disagree with Kaepernick, which maybe I do, maybe I don't. I think the audience who's listened to me before probably knows that I don't. But at least they're being like intellectually genuine with their audience and with the people that they sell shoes to and with the people that they support with sponsors. It's like, hey man, like, cool. If you piss off Scott Groves and he doesn't buy any more Nikes, who cares? Because that's not the target audience you were going after. So I appreciate that braveness of Nike.
And don't kid yourself. They did research on that with their target. What
the brand manager, right?
I'd be amazed if they didn't. It's like they are just the people running the brands, because that was kind of a big national thing. And they were like, how do you feel about this person? How do you feel about that person? Whatever. And if you do your homework and it comes out to young people are going to this, it has some stickiness. It has some, some Velcro, a buddy of mine calls it mental Velcro. You remember that
I like
kind of
that
stuff.
term.
When
Write that down.
When it came out, I thought in terms of just, wow, I knew they'd done their homework, and it's like, that's where they came out. And it didn't matter if, I agreed, disagreed, or whatever. It's just,
Yeah, it's good marketing.
It's good. I thought it was smart marketing, because I assume you did the work.
Yeah.
So
I do really love it when brands feel authentic. Like I can't even call it donating because they're not a nonprofit. There's a for-profit company called 4Ocean, and I used to donate to two companies that do saving the oceans, getting all the plastic out. Surfrider Foundation and 4Ocean, and Surfrider Foundation is a nonprofit, and 4Ocean has come out and said, no. We make this jewelry out of recycled plastic. We sell it at a profit, and then all of our profits go back into saving the oceans. But we have found that kind of logistically running our company, it's easier to be for profit. I love them. Every time we close a deal, a mortgage deal, we donate $100 to, well, again, not donate. We buy some product from 4Ocean because I really appreciate it. Throughout the last year and a half, the Surfrider Foundation, which is a nonprofit, they've just decided they're going to attach themselves, because they're very liberal in the environmental space. They're going to attach themselves to like every liberal cause that can possibly that possibly comes up. So for months and months, and probably the last couple of years, it's like I'm just getting bombarded with Surfrider messages of, we stand with Black Lives Matter, or we stand with Gay Pride, or we stand with this. And I'm like, that's not your core mission. And I feel like it's so inauthentic. And as a brand and as advertising, it feels panderous. I have completely stopped donating to the Surfrider Foundation, but I believe in their core mission, cleaning up the beaches and getting plastic out of the ocean. So now I just put all my money towards 4Ocean, because it feels like, hey, this is what we do. We don't care about all that other stuff. Have whatever political belief you want. Our brand is saving the ocean. And I just appreciate that so much.
Each one of those things is a decision that a brand makes, a product makes, a brand makes, or whatever. And it's what you said about a minute ago. It's like, what rings true? What seems like it's authentic to me? What thing is authentic? And you don't even have to agree with some brand, but if you like what they're doing, ultimately you want to use the brands that speak to you in whatever way they do. And we're all, it's nice to say that it doesn't affect us at all, but like we all get pulled in by, I like this thing. I like this, whatever.
Right.
A Brita filter. Just bought a Brita filter. It's like, Brita filter, I believe, is still Clorox. I never got it because I didn't want to do the pour thing. I'm going off brand, but it was like, I thought I should do it. I shouldn't buy all the bottled water. I should do it. And I never did it. And I think it was a thing of like, I don't want to, every time I want a glass of water, pour it out of a pitcher. A friend of mine had a Brita filter that fits in it's skinny and it's tall and has a spigot. And you put it, it holds more than a pitcher. And I had to adjust my refrigerator shelves to make it fit or whatever. But it's like, that's what I want. I just want to fill it up every couple of days and not pour it. I want it. It's a tap for water. It makes a little green thing to let you know the filter still works. It's like,
I like this.
I'm a sucker now for the Brita. I've convinced myself it tastes better. Does it? I think it does.
That's all that matters, right?
That's all that matters, or whatever. So like we're all susceptible to it, and but I think I would agree with you that I don't give a monkey spank what Brita Filter thinks other than that, and you saw it a lot. You saw brands get caught up in what is the Goya beans or whatever they get caught up with their CEO. You see, My Pillow's not really a good example because that's the guy who runs My Pillow. That's his thing. But I think that when it's a Anheuser-Busch was always very good about not taking sides. Or what, like I remember when I got into advertising, and they were like, I remember going, I didn't know that they did ads in gay magazines that cater to gay clientele. I didn't know until I saw, and they asked us to do some, and it was like, well, of course, but they didn't do it anywhere else. Now they'll do it elsewhere, and they'll have Budweiser, Pride and whatever. But there was a time when they were afraid of the He-Men who drink Budweiser, so it's like, I do have some empathy for brands to a point, but it's when it becomes pandering, obviously you don't like it or whatever. And it's kind of like, also like, show a little, everybody likes to see courage, right?
Right.
So in anything. So that as well. But when you get to be a certain size, you're trying to be everything to, I worked on, McDonald's. I worked on Wheaties. I worked on, Budweiser, and it's like, and somebody would always make, not even a joke. It's like everybody with a stomach. That's your target sometimes.
right.
More, not beer,
everybody with a taste bud. Everybody with a taste bud.
It's like, for cereal, like Wheaties, like, everybody with. So, it's tough when you do that, and I this has become like a marketing thing. I'm more of a fan of, I'd rather give up half of my audience and be more authentic to the other half, because I think it's going to, in the long run, be better for you. But what do I know?
Well, it's interesting because I always wonder, obviously you're probably biased on the subject because you come from the billion-dollar industry, which is advertising.
No, but I was like smaller clients.
Okay, but if a product gets so big like Coca-Cola, Bud Light, is there really a return on investment for those ad dollars? Because is somebody really going to continue to drink Coca-Cola or become a new Coca-Cola drinker because they see the polar bear ad around Christmas? Or are people just going to continue to drink Coca-Cola and become new Coca-Cola drinkers because it's in every restaurant, soda dispenser at the movie theaters? Yeah. I always wonder, do you get to a certain brand where there's a diminishing return on the advertisement, or are consumers such dipshits that if I don't keep seeing Coca-Cola ads, I'll start drinking Dr. Pepper, which is a far superior soda? But does it matter? Have you ever seen any studies on this? Is there actually a return on investment on these ad dollars?
First of all, when we're off the air, I will tell you the brand of Dr. Pepper original recipe made with cane sugar that you can find.
Kroger's, right? Okay. All right. Well,
Galco Soda Pop Shop in my neighborhood of Highland Park that I can get you OG Dr. Pepper.
Okay. This is going to be the highlight of my life because I love Dr. Pepper.
It's a big thing.
That probably accounted for 20 pounds of my weight gain in my 30s because I love Dr. Pepper. I've had to really slow it down. I only have one once in a blue moon, but God, I love Dr. Pepper. 23 flavors. It's amazing.
It's a quality product. A couple of things, and I'll do two different takes on this. This was explained to me once, and it stuck with me. So it isn't necessarily correct. It just stuck with me, and it's a way to look at it. And they were talking about a major brand like Coca-Cola. Said, and they might have used Budweiser, but I think it was Coca-Cola. But if you stopped advertising Coca-Cola, pulled out all the stadium signage, pulled out all the commercials, because it's not just commercials, right? It's all the places you're exposed to Coca-Cola. And you just had it on the shelves, and you just had it in McDonald's, so you go to a fast food place, they have Coca-Cola, and you see it on the shelves. That's it. You pull the plug on everything else. It doesn't fade away right away because people are so used to seeing that stuff.
Right.
You're so used to seeing that stuff, but little by little, 10 years down the road, you haven't seen something for 10 years. Anybody who's young, who might have started drinking Coca-Cola, kids don't drink Coca-Cola.
Yeah, kids don't drink soda.
Yeah.
Drink whiskey and Negronis instead.
Way better for you. Very good Negroni. But so it was explained to me that way. It's like it's not that they need to do it constantly. It's like there's an overall presence that they need. And Coca-Cola, Starbucks used to do a thing where they didn't really for years. Starbucks didn't advertise. Now they do. But their advertising was opening up more Starbucks, and there was a a few places like this. I remember one was in, I think it was Vancouver, where you could go into a Starbucks on a corner, look out the window, and there was a Starbucks on the corner across the street.
Totally.
Kitty corner to it. That was their advertising, and that was their thing. That was their marketing way to look at things. Like, we want to be ubiquitous, and they kind of did it, right? So everything matures. All these brands do the product life cycle, and eventually they get to the point where they have to do something. And Starbucks got to the point where, like, we can't buy any more places to do Starbucks or whatever. We had to start advertising and start to expand, and now they do different things or whatever. So, that answer your question? I mean,
yeah, it does, because what you're really talking about is like generational advertising. Like what do you think?
And I also think there's things like you watch a decent amount of sports, right?
Yeah.
You probably can remember back when there weren't that many insurance companies that advertise. Now, Geico, they have 3 or 4 different campaigns. It's not just
all the time.
Yeah, there's Geico. There's Flow from Progressive. There's State Farm. There's what am I leaving? Allstate with Mayhem. Part of it also is you're in this environment and you're look at your competition.
Yeah, it feels like an arms race, right?
Yes, to a certain degree. It's like I have friends who worked on State Farm when that was taking off, and I'm like, that's a good place to be, because State Farm is looking around and saying, we have to be out there, because it's not just what works. It's also, you got agents who see your competition all the time, and they're like, we need, it doesn't necessarily, it's not like, here's the math formula. You get people yelling at you saying, we need to have funny ads too. They've got the Geico Gecko, and they've got the caveman, and it just becomes a thing. I had my friends were working on State Farm, and they were so busy. They said, Bob, can you do the radio? And it's like, yeah, sure. Tell me what you want, and I'll do the radio campaign for it. And it's, so now that's a thing. It's like, does it make sense? Probably not, because they could probably all stop, but they're all in competition with each other.
Arms race.
Yeah.
It's funny because I'm carrying 2 thoughts in my head right now. One is, I do mortgages, and when I get a new client and we send out our, welcome to escrow, you just got your offer accepted, I give 2 insurance agents. I give my buddy Charles Martin at State Farm, shout out to Charles, and I give my buddy Eric Hamilton at Crescenta Valley Insurance Services, CVIS, and he's a broker. I don't know, because I haven't price shopped or compared in a long time, but maybe Eric, sorry, Charles and Eric, maybe Eric is the better insurance agent. Maybe he has better product. But I will tell you, 90% of my clients call Charles Martin first, because they're used to the State Farm commercials. So they see Charles Martin, State Farm, Eric Hamilton, CVS Insurance. They call Charles first. He's very core competent. He's a great guy, good customer service. They always go with him, to the point where Eric called me a couple of years ago. He's like, hey, man, did I upset you? And I'm like, no, I love you, man. What's going on? He's like, right. Well, I don't get any referrals from you anymore. I'm like, hey, I don't mean to sound like a dick. I always put 2 names on there. It used to be you and some other broker that had a nondescript name of the company.
And I feel like I'm throwing out too many marketing terms, but there's a thing, unaided awareness and top of mind awareness. Like,
say the first one, unedited?
Unaided awareness.
Unaided
where
awareness.
Like that's the person you think of.
Yeah.
Top of mind is like, but it could be aided awareness, where I say, do you know this other broker as well? And you go, oh yes, of course I do, but you didn't think of them first.
Right.
So that's the thing as well.
Yeah. So it's like, apparently those all those commercials were killing it. Yeah, it's interesting because you were talking about brand awareness and the really what did you say, the aided or the unaided?
Aided awareness versus unaided. Aided awareness is, I say, name insurance companies, and you name whatever that's top of the head, and then don't say State Farm. And I say, what about State Farm? And you go, oh yeah.
State Farm too.
That's aided awareness. Unaided is like whatever you
Interesting.
But it's like it's two different things that they measure. Yeah.
So those were the two thoughts I was trying to keep in mind, is like the brand awareness matters. So clearly this marketing works. And then on the other side of the coin, there's this transactional provider called insurance, title insurance in the mortgage process. And coming out of 2009, now, by the way, title insurance reps, they sell you insurance to make sure that when you buy a house, you are the sole owner of the house, and they insure against that, which is kind of funny because it's the biggest racket ever. They're insuring something that happened in the past. They're basically just doing the research to make sure nobody else has a lien against the house. It'd be like if you paid your fire insurance on January 1st and State Farm was like, good job, you didn't have a fire last year. Go ahead and pay us your insurance premium. Yes. It's the biggest racket. So title insurance. But coming out of 2009, title insurance agents were thrown under the bus just like all the lenders were. And what happened was all the title insurance companies got together and they sponsored a bill that said that the insurance companies could no longer do any type of pay-to-play type business. So as an example, in 2006, there's 41 home basketball games. I think I went to 30 Laker games that year.
Oh, wow.
Because the title insurance reps would come in with donuts and Laker tickets and whatnot. And so they were in this arms race, right? Where New American Title and Old American Title and First American Title and all these companies, they were in this arms race where the title agents were just trying to buy you off so that when you opened the loan, you would put in, Old Republic or First National or Orange County Title. And so they all got together and they said, fuck this arms race. We're spending so much money catering to these realtors and these loan officers that a bill passed in the state legislature that's like there can be no more pay-to-play situation in the title insurance business. And now they're making more money than ever. The title reps are making more money than ever. They're happier because they said, we are going to stop this advertising arms race and we're going to stop collaborating against each other. And now they don't have to buy
the game. Yeah,
exactly. Now they don't have to buy that shit. So I always wonder if Geico and State Farm and, Northwestern Mutual and Farmers, if they all got together and they're like, hey guys, this is silly. Let's win on service. Let's win at the ground level. And we can stop spending $4 billion a year on advertising or whatever.
And I don't know the answer. I mean, I know that price fixing is illegal, although I'm sure there's price fixing all the time, right?
Right.
So I don't know what is allowed legally and what is not. I do wonder, why is every time I watch a ball game, it's all insurance ads,
right?
Or not all, but you know what I mean.
It's that and Viagra. So it's Viagra, beer, and insurance.
Occasionally they'll throw a Jeep Cherokee in there, but that's about it.
Yeah, exactly. I got to buy a Jeep Cherokee, and then when I get drunk and I crash it, I got to have really good insurance. And then because I injured myself, I need Viagra to get my dick hard. Yes. So I feel like that's what they assume every 25 to 45-year-old man is going through.
Yes.
Amazing. All right. You got to tell us about the joke that you got to write for the correspondence dinner for Obama. This is good stuff. Like most people can't say that they wrote a joke for Obama.
Well, and there was a woman who I won't say her name because she said after the fact, she said, now you can say whatever you want, but at the time she worked on his campaign. His campaign headquarters was right downtown
Chicago, right? Where are you from?
Yeah, I worked there for one day for free just to see it. I just wanted to see a major, candidate's campaign headquarters. And I saw David Axelrod walk out. I was nerdy enough to go, oh, there's David Axelrod. But I didn't really, I wrote some taglines or headlines or something. But she had worked there. And I told her, I said, well, if you work on the campaign, and she's a graphic designer, graphic artist. I said, if you work on it, I said, chances are he's going to win. Incumbents usually win. You'll have this great thing on your resume. And I said, if you want to, get into animation, work for Pixar, whatever, write your ticket. And she could not. It wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. But the person who was her boss went to work in the White House and called her and said, come and work in the White House. She worked in the I believe, physically in the White House for 4 years. And she gave me a call. This is I think the first year she was there, saying, it was the correspondence dinner, which may be going away now, whatever. But at the time it was very much a thing, and it was the nerd prom, the correspondence.
Yeah, dinner. And this is where the president pokes fun at himself, right, in front of all the reporters,
pokes fun at the press, it's And she called up and she's very smart. She's very funny. And she said, we're screwed. We needed, you've got to help me. You've got to, I knew her from an agency we'd worked together in Chicago. You've got to help me. You've got to help with this thing or whatever. And I got the parameters down and worked with her. And it was one of these jokes where the payoff of the joke is, it's much like Weekend Update or Seth Meyers, where the payoff of the joke is the visual. So the president or Seth Meyers or whatever says the setup, and then the joke is the thing. So the joke had to do with he had a high school that was named after him in Chicago. And he said he started to think about his legacy, and it's so that's what I knew. It had to be something about the high school in Chicago, and he goes, it's humbling, that there's a Barack Obama school in Chicago, and at the time it was who was the governor of Texas before? He was the Secretary of Energy.
Yeah, not Abbott.
Glasses.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly who you're talking about.
This is what happens with your legacy when you. Anyway, it was whatever his name was, which I'm drawing a complete blank now. Obama said he also named a high school after me. So the joke, you already know the joke is going to be something good, and then it's just a matter of like, okay, what is it going to look like? And we took that sign that's in front of every high school that says "Home of the whatever," and it was a home of the raging socialists. It was home. It was the raging socialists home of the, or no, it was raging socialist high school. I'm literally going over this sign in my head again. Raging socialist high school. Home of the Fighting Chomskys, for Noam Chomsky, because I said,
wow,
in that room that will play, it's on a sign, we'll read it and it will play in the room, I think, fingers crossed. And then we had to have a thing that is on the sign, and the thing that was on the sign, and all this took like maybe an hour, probably a half hour, where she's going, no, yes, no, yes. And the joke was, bake sale this Tuesday, all proceeds will be divided completely equally. So it was some like another socialism joke or whatever. And it got a big laugh in the room. And I was so proud of, and I told her, it can't be fighting Chomskys. It has to be fighting apostrophe Chomskys, because that's always funny when you have to fight in anything or whatever. So I probably worked on it for less than an hour. And then a week later, there's Obama doing I was a Saturday. I was getting ready to go out to dinner, and I stayed around and watched it. It's like, this odd, surreal thing, but it's like, hey, it's fun to be asked to serve your country in that capacity.
That's
to write
awesome.
A silly joke, and then I got to do it a couple more times.
Does this go on your resume, like comedic write it to the president?
Oh, hell yes.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, that's a good line. Like, I feel like that could get you an interview at Saturday Night Live. Comedic writer to Obama. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
So wait, you got called back to do a couple more?
Yeah, she was in for 4 years. So she did, the last year was a video where she was he's getting ready to leave office. I think Clinton did something like this too. He's getting ready to leave office, and he's trying to figure things out. And there was a script that was written, and she called up and said, "Oh my God, it's a disaster. This script, we'll never get a laugh. We'll never do a thing." And I said, "Well, we can't throw it out. Let's look at the script. You have to think, somebody wrote the script, and that's probably the person who was supposed to write the script, so they don't want to be told they can't do it, whatever." And it wasn't terrible. There was a lot of funny stuff in there, but I kind of like molded the stuff that was in there. There was a very funny thing about Obama having to go to the DMV because now that he's not president anymore, he needs a driver's license like everybody else. And I thought that was very funny because everyone hates the DMV. So of course he would, and he would have that great look like, oh my gosh, I have to wait in line, whatever. And she actually got to play the person at the DMV because she didn't tell me. She had some training at Groundlings or Second City or something like that. So she got to show up and play opposite to Obama. But Biden's in the thing and Obama's in the thing, and
that's very cool.
I got to do things like that. And even recently she's in Brooklyn now. She'll call me and say, I need there's somebody who's running for, I don't know, mayor of New York or some happy horse shit like that, and he promised some new dog parks, and she needed cat jokes to show that he cared about cats too. So I was just like, it's fun to write jokes for comedians, because it's pretty pure. You don't you kind of know, you have to be able to do a sliding scale if you're doing comedy of, who's my audience? Like on the Fallout Lounge, I'm trying to do things that would make me laugh. So it always makes me happy when somebody goes, that's really funny. It's really dark. And it's like, yeah. I'm not trying, but I am trying to make myself laugh. So it's like, yeah, if I need to, go we did a sketch once. It was a Playboy trying to modernize whatever. And I always think it was weird, like a lot of people did, that, gee, Hugh Hefner is dating like 20-year-olds and he's, 106 and, what's that? And it was the version of the latest version of how's Playboy going to do it. And so I thought they had a playmate or whatever, and she's excited and she got these great things. And then it's like, what are you here to do? And she's like, I'm here to have sex with Hef. And they pull him out of his crypt and she has sex with him. And once you get to that point, so I had to write some stuff to get there. But once you get to that point, it's like, you're kind of done with the sketch because she's going to have sex with a corpse. It's just sound effects from that point. It's creaking. It's
this is good stuff.
Brittle bones or whatever. So it's like, you can do that stuff when you're doing your own show.
Yeah.
Not a podcast, a show. But when you're doing it for somebody who's trying to get elected,
yeah,
you have to round off the court. You can still make it funny. It's not that it's not funny. You have to hit the thing. But it's like, think of your average network sitcom. How funny is it? I'm not talking about hits. I'm talking about the average one. It's like, it's okay.
It's okay.
You got nothing else to watch. It's like, it's got to appeal to a lot of people. They don't want to get in trouble, whatever. It's like, you go on Netflix when you want something that's like, I want something a little with a dagger in,
But apparently, because we were talking about this before we went on the air, apparently now you can masturbate on your Zoom office meeting and nobody cares. You can still be on network TV. What's his name that's on that's back on morning TV? Tubin. Yeah. Oh yes. My God. So for people that don't know what we're talking about, Tubin, who's
Jeff Tubin, is it?
Yeah, a writer for the New York Times. You got to look this up, Chris.
He was the New Yorker. He lost his job with the New Yorker.
Yeah, writing for the New Yorker. They're in a office Zoom meeting.
Yes.
And he just starts jerking off, just pulls it out and starts jerking off. And what's so funny is when he made his apology, and this is the funniest thing of the whole thing. His apology was
2 days ago.
Yeah. His apology was like, I didn't know the camera was on.
Yes.
It's like, no, the answer should have been, I shouldn't have been jerking off during an office meeting, yes. Not I didn't know the camera was on. That's like somebody getting caught with a 14-year-old and be like, well, I thought she was 15. It's like, no, it was still illegal. Like, you shouldn't have been doing it. That just seemed like the weirdest excuse. Well, I didn't know the camera was on. Well, why were you jerking off in an office staff meeting?
I wasn't on the call.
I really want to see the screenshot just to see how egregious it was.
Yeah. I've heard different versions of it. One I heard that was plausible is that they were going on break. And I think that's not in dispute. They were going on break. And I guess when you go on break and it's on Zoom, apparently you have to press, and this sounds like it could be an excuse, but apparently you have to press, do you want to get out of the room twice? Not once, twice. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not good with Zoom. But that's a deal. And then the way I heard it on a podcast the other day was that he turned to another computer. So I thought he was doing it to someone in the room.
Yeah, that's the story I heard.
That's what I heard. But the way I heard it, which is like, it's still not great, but it's like he went to a different computer and I thought, he's watching porn. And they said, no, it's actually a woman who he was having sex with in a break, like 20-minute break. It's like, player.
Yeah, player. But
but I don't know where the truth lies. I just know I believe it's Jeff Tubin. He, I believe, is now back on. He did his mea culpa, and now he's back on. I think he's 7:00 in the morning, but hey, it's a job.
Yeah, I used to work at Washington Mutual, and here in California, labor laws are very, very strict. So Washington Mutual was super strict about
masturbation company, weren't they?
No masturbation company. You got to check out for your full hour lunch. You got to take your 2 15-minute breaks. Never at any time in the history of working at Washington Mutual was I getting ready to go on a 15-minute break and be like, you know what I need to do? I need to go in the back office and just rub one out. Like, it just never crossed my mind. Like, who's on an office meeting and they're like, I got a 20-minute break. Let me go sex with this chick over here on this other computer and just jerk off, where I might still be on Zoom. And it's just like, how does he get away with that and still have a job in the public eye? It just blows my mind.
The thing that this is just me, You can write. He was writing for the New Yorker. If you can write for the New Yorker, you can write for a lot of things.
You're brilliant if you can write for the New Yorker, right?
Forgetting for a moment or putting aside for a moment whether he's culpable or not. Say he's completely innocent or he's completely guilty. Put that aside for a second. It happened. And now I'm this person, and I think, you know what the world needs is to see me on TV. I don't understand that even a little bit. I would say I need to write.
Yeah, I got to make a living.
Yeah, I got to make a living or whatever, but it's like, I don't know if he's pixelated below the waist now. It just seems like, how do you watch that and not either be repulsed or laugh at, think it's funny on some level that he doesn't want to. He's talking about serious issue. I don't know what his area of expertise is. I think we all know what.
I know. But I'm going to take a shot and say it's politics because it feels like all these guys come from politics, right?
But I don't know what like if he slices and dices exactly what type of politics he's good at election laws or whatever. But the idea that I'm going to take my career and I need to be back on, and maybe he doesn't have a big ego, but a lot of people on the news have big egos. It's not a thing on one side of the aisle or another or whatever. But it's like that's the part. It's like I would, after the extensive plastic surgery I would have done, never go on TV again. I would just say I'm going to do the other thing. He wrote for the New Yorker.
Yeah, I would be mortified.
There's these things called nom de plumes. You could have a pen name. You could do it. You could, like, during the McCarthyism, during the blacklist, there were Trumbo. Is that the movie? There was a movie a couple of years ago about somebody who was blacklisted, Trumbo, who they changed their name. You used a different name. You gave your work to somebody else. You got paid a different. There's ways to get around it.
Yeah.
Now, granted, that's something that happens to you that you didn't have anything to do with, or say, there was a witch hunt for communists, but still, it's like you can work around.
I feel like
workarounds.
I feel like at least a year hiatus, like jerking off on Zoom. It's not a felony, but I feel like maybe there should be like a year in the penalty box.
I believe he said his initial mea culpa, I think it was 7 months.
Okay.
7, and it, bracketed it with like miserable months. It's like, well, yeah, I guess.
I guess in COVID, like 7 months, like it's kind of like dog years. Feels like 8 years.
I don't have a good parallel to, I don't have a good parallel for somebody who's, well, Pee Wee Herman famously got, he got caught in it was like a sting operation, and it took him a long time. He didn't do anything, right? He went into a back before the internet, into a porno video place, and I mean, in fairness, there is like an 8-foot vagina in front of you.
Yes. What else are you going to do?
Of course.
Of course. It was at a movie theater. I feel like that was a little bit more justified than on Zoom.
We've got vagina is majestic.
We've gone completely off the rails. But you mentioned that you'll write some dark stuff for your comedy show. We were talking a little bit before we started recording. Like, is there a point where marketing goes a little too far? I got the Gadsden flag up here. I'm pretty much a libertarian. I'm all about free market, free choice, free will. If you sign on the line which is dotted, it's your responsibility to pay the mortgage, whatever. But we were talking a little bit about marketing. Like, can marketing be so pervasive and go so far and be so in our face that you almost lose that free will? We're using some examples like the Joe Camel on the cigarettes. Did that make kids smoke? And and a friend of mine
I'll talk about this, but I'll talk about that if you, because I'm interested in that. I didn't know what that symbol, the no trinomial thing is.
Yeah.
The idea of late market capitalism, is it okay to have any fine print whatsoever, and your average person who's a hardworking guy or whatever gets, signs a credit card that he doesn't know exactly what he sent or hasn't read all the things, or isn't a lawyer himself, or doesn't have aspect to it? Is that fair? I don't know that. I don't know that I think that is.
Yeah. I don't know the answer to that, because the famous example is the subprime mortgages, right? Like there were some mortgages that were sold some of them by me at Washington Mutual, where it's like, your average consumer probably didn't get how that worked. And your average consumer should probably know what they're signing. I don't know. I'm confused about that. But we were using more of the examples like, advertising to kids with the mango flavored Juul cigarettes or the Spud McKenzie dolls that were being sold to kids to make them drink Budweiser or Bud Light or whatever it was. Like, is there a point, and this might be hard for you to parse out because you work in the industry. Is there a point where advertising goes too far where you're like, maybe not that one?
Yeah, I think all the time. I think we saw it with your little boy, and he grabbed a White Claw. And
Great example.
One of these things, whatever.
And just for the record, I do not allow my 5-year-old to drink White Claw.
Of course, but you had to stop because he saw a shiny can.
Yeah,
it could have been a soda.
Yeah,
I don't know that it says. I don't know where it says anything that he would know.
All the way down on the bottom, it says alcohol abbreviated 5%. So it I think I have the only 5-year-old that loves to drink kombucha, and it comes in a can, an aluminum can that looks just like a beer can. And so sometimes I tell him to bring everything to me because, again, only 5-year-old who loves Perrier and loves kombucha. And once in a while, he'll grab one of my wife's White Claws or a Bud Light in a can that doesn't look like a Bud Light. And he knows what beer is, and he knows he can't drink beer because that's what Dad drinks.
Right.
But the marketing looks like kids.
Kid. Yeah. When I was working on beer, they went from saying entry level drinker to 21-year-old because they didn't want to blur the lines, because they, and as Bush had lobbyists, and I'm sure they were pushing for 18-year-olds to drink. If you're old enough to go into the army, then you should be able to drink.
Yeah.
Things like that. And they want to make money. They're in it to make money. Do they want Mothers Against Drunk Driving ended up working with them, and to get more drunk drivers off the road or whatever. But it's not that they were ever in favor of it, but they want to make money. That's what they were doing, and it's a. I think all these things are balancing acts. I think that certainly the White Claws and the beers that are doing it, and I did a lot of ads, and all I could do for myself was to do a situation like the paper or plastic thing, where it's like these are guys, and Anheuser-Busch actually did a smart thing where they would cast somebody, even though it was 21 was the drinking age, they voluntarily, and I think Coors did it and Miller did it as well, would in their advertising would only cast people who were 25 because they didn't want any gray area there. They wanted to be able to say, nope, we looked at their driver's license, they were 25 years old. So I remember trying to get people, who were 25 and they're 24, and we're like, oh, damn it, we can't use them, even though legally you could, but within the industry where we worked, we couldn't. And it's one of those things where, how far do you want to push it? Now I think there's and this is, I actually studied this crap at Northwestern. So it's a matter of, we used to be told, if you don't police yourself as an industry, as a company, whatever, if you don't police yourself, the government will be forced to go in there and say, okay, you can't do these things or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's the case anymore. I think that there's a lot of hands off or whatever, and you can say that that's good or that's not good. But I'll give you an example. Because like for the most part, I'd rather my brother is very, very rich, very, very Republican. Doesn't like regulations, and it's like for the most part, I'd say yes. For the most part, but every industry will try, if you're trying to push and push and push and push to make more margins, make more money. There's an example from the 50s and 60s, I think, of peanut butter, where peanut butters, it was all about the race to get the creamiest peanut butter. That was the big thing you wanted to hang your hat on. There's Skippy, there's Jif, there's Peter Pan. Those are the big three, and they're trying to get more faces in the store.
The creamiest, most spreadable peanut butter.
So what did they start doing? Put cold cream in the peanut butter.
I don't even know what that is.
Cold cream it's stuff that women put on their faces to soften their faces, to wash. I'm not exactly sure what it is. It's not edible, but it makes things smooth. And they would put this thing that it wasn't poison, but it wasn't food. It wasn't food. It was something that would make you think creamier. And eventually, now this is in the 50s and 60s, the government stepped in and said, okay, you can't put cold cream in you can't put
butter.
makeup remover or makeup applier or whatever cold cream is. I think it's an old thing that probably still somebody makes it, whatever. But I do think that there are regulations that sometimes make sense.
Yeah.
Just, because all you want to do is grab your jar of peanut butter and eat it and not worry about anything.
Right.
So
right.
How many like bug parts can you have in it? How much broken glass? At some point you got to have something that's a guardrail, I think. But that's me.
And this is where the Libertarian Party will never come to power or have a candidate, because you get 100 libertarians in a room, they will all disagree on what libertarianism, right?
Okay.
Because like the classic, we'll call it far right, but most extreme libertarian would be like, no, the FDA should not exist. If they decide to put arsenic in peanut butter, a few people will die, but eventually the market will fix itself, and Scott will know not to buy the peanut butter with the arsenic in it for his kid, or the company will police themselves and not put the arsenic in it because they're killing themselves. But we have plenty of industries, plenty of examples. The cigarette industry is one of them, where it's like, no, they'll play in the gray area or the deep black area for 30 years to sell more product.
They'll buy off scientists or medical doctors to say there's the evidence is inconclusive.
Yeah, doctors approve of Newport menthols or whatever. It's like, no, they don't. Yeah. You found one asshole who took your $100,000.
You've seen old ads of doctors smoking, like Chesterfield's was an old brand.
Yeah, 4 out of 5 doctors prefer Chesterfield. So I'm a little bit more of this like what they would kind of call the night watchman libertarian, where it's like, yes, I want free markets, I want personal choice. The classic libertarian t-shirt is like, same-sex marriage with an AR-15 by the bed while smoking weed, just leave me alone and don't tax me. That's kind of the thing. But I also kind of believe that night watchman state, like there's a place for the government for regulation and big programs and stuff. But we were talking about the famous in the 80s or 90s, the congressman standing there on the floor with the Spud McKenzie doll, like they're trying to sell our kids Budweiser through the Spud McKenzie dog, and it's like,
for the younger viewers, Spud McKenzie was a dog, a bull terrier, I believe.
Yeah,
who was the mascot for Bud Light.
I had a Spud McKenzie doll when I was a kid, because my grandmother owned a small liquor store that was attached to like a gas station or whatever, and they would bring all the promotional stuff. So I had a Spud McKenzie doll. Didn't mean I ended up drinking Bud Light. I think Bud Light's actually disgusting, but it does create
it's not getting better.
Yeah, it's not getting better. It does create a dilemma where it's like, well, marketing is just marketing, and people have free will to make the choices they want. But when you start advertising to kids or an underdeveloped economic class or whatnot, does the advertising become abusive? Yeah.
Oh, I thought something just cut. There's no ad on the air that is not approved by the client. So, there was a time when Anheuser-Busch, there was a guy who said, when we bring edgier stuff, a guy who I liked, what was his name? Tom Sharbaugh, I think. And he was very, very smart, and he would say, don't bring us heroin. It's hard to keep our hands up. Like if you did something that was edgy, I can't think of an ad in particular, but it was just like something like you're trying to make 21-year-olds laugh,
right?
To like your product or whatever. So you're trying to bring in something that would make like that can be things. I hate the word edgy, but something that is pushing the envelope a little bit for what a corporation that has to answer to a lot of people, would be. And he would say something along those lines. So I think, things can go too far. Remember Four Loko a couple of years ago?
No.
Four Loko. There were Miller had a brand called Sparks, and Four Loko. It was things you get them at a 7-Eleven. It was like a 16 ounce, it could be 20 ounce or whatever. Lots of alcohol, lots of sugar, and some had caffeine. So alcohol, like, you know what I mean?
It's like the most addictive product ever: alcohol, caffeine, and sugar.
And it was kind of marketed to Sparks dialed it down. They used to have they originally had caffeine, and then because it was Miller, they I think it was the government, or I can't remember, maybe it was the FDA, said you got to take the caffeine out of it. But Four Loko and Sparks, it was the kind of thing, and they weren't expensive, that you drink before you went out for the night. You're young, you're just drinking age, and these things tasted awful. awful, but mess you up quickly. So when you hit the bars and you don't have any money, you don't have to drink that much because you're already the bar. You know, you're not going to drink one in a bar.
Yeah, a little pre-drink, a little pre-party,
but a big pre-party or whatever. So that, and eventually Four Loko, I think they were independent, so it took them longer to get in trouble because Sparks was Miller, so they got their hands. You know, I think they just got to talk it to, and also it wasn't just the FDA saying you can't do this. I think it was Miller saying, do we want to do this? So it's not that, you know, these companies are all immoral. You know, there's a lot of pressure to make numbers, but there's also like, okay, this is clearly something we could, you know, do we want to be attached to this in any way, shape, or form? And maybe not. And there's going to be somebody, if it's a true free market, like Four Loko or like whomever is going to come in and, you know, say whatever. So you can maybe, you know, Philip Morris or whatever they call themselves nowadays doesn't want to do vaping, or maybe they do. I don't follow that much. But some small company can go, we're going to be the vape company, and we're going to be the fun vape company for kids that have the best flavors. And,
the mango raspberry.
Exactly. You know, so you're always going to have that dynamic because if there's money to be made, you know, somebody's going to move in and do that. And I don't know the answer. You know, I don't like overregulation, but I do think it's like, you know, you like self-regulations. That was what I was taught in school was like self-regulation is the best. That's the best one where, you know, we're saying we're not gonna have unicorns and stuff on the cans and
probably a bad look if my 5-year-old or my 3-year-old's very enticed by your beer brand.
Yes.
What's the question I forgot to ask you? Like I always like to ask that, you know, people, you know, you've got a pretty awesome career from writing jokes for Obama to working for Bud Light. Like there's got to be a great story in there I missed. Like what's the question I forgot to ask you, or what's the story you want people to hear?
Probably should have prepared something. I'm trying to think of like people like fun name dropping that, you know, people that I really liked working with. Like what there were some days that are just really, really fun. A lot of days are, you know, you're thinking stuff up, or you're, you know, doing something that's, you know, kind of mundane or whatever. And then they're very fun times when you get to, you know, meet somebody who's great or whatever. I'm sure I had better stories than this. Like I got to write a thing and meet Bob Newhart once, and he was as awesome as you would hope Bob Newhart was. You know, we had heard beforehand. I was like, oh, he can be a little weird. That was, you know, what was weird is the person who told us he was a little weird. He could not have been lovelier. He was like a grandpa. He stayed afterward. He told stories. I think he knew that he was this comic icon. And so days like that are fun. And for the most part, working with celebrities, except for comedians are always fun because they just want to do whatever makes it funny. You know, they tend not to have attitude. It's like you can talk to them in terms of like, is it funny like this or funny like that? They just want the thing to be funny. So I always liked working with them. I worked with Jon Stewart once when he was very early in his on his show, and it was just wonderful because it's like having another writer right there.
And do the Bob Newharts, do the Jon Stewarts, do they look at you and just pat you on the head and say that was a big miss, or is it a collaborative effort where they're like, hey man, that's a good jumping off point, let's try to make it better? Or are they just like, do they just have a comedic instinct where they know, hey, that's going to land or that's not going to land, or is it really a work in progress?
I think they're aware of what Bob Newhart's obviously a lot older, and he kind of knew what he did. And I wrote 3 scripts, and the difference between Bob Newhart in the recording studio and Bob Newhart out is that he doesn't stammer, because, you know, it's like that's comedically he does that. But he's still like that guy. He's the same guy. He just doesn't stammer. The joke was somebody at one point in his career said to him, you know, you should use the stammer, and he said, stammer got me a house in Bel Air.
Yeah.
So, but no, it's not a bad. They want it to be good. Newhart, there was one word on one of 3 scripts that he said, I don't know that it was a voiceover thing. He wasn't going to be on camera. It was a voiceover thing. And it was like yum or something like that. He goes, I don't know that I'd say that. And I took it out. I marked up the script with red as he was going through it. I just took out yum and marked up the lines that he read, and they're all great because it sounds like Bob Newhart, and at the end of it, that was the only thing that he changed in the whole thing, and he liked it, and I had him sign that script, and I have it on my wall in my office, the Bob
awesome.
Newhart script, where like I took one word out, and there's that, and no, they want I think in particular, and it depends. Sometimes you're throwing a celebrity and you didn't pick them, and they look down on advertising, or they whatever, but for the most part, I had good luck, and and also, I don't want to embarrass myself. So if you're working with Jon Stewart, try to write the shit out of it, right?
Right.
So
this is the A copy.
I mean, maybe he left and said, "What a putz," but while he was there, he did a really good job with what it was, and then we had him go ahead and like, okay, now anything you want to add, and he would do the stuff, still the same basic framework, but you throw one out and you'd be like, oh, that's better. It's better joke. So no, I think as far as with celebrities, it's changed, and I think Ryan Reynolds does Aviation Gin, and he did a very funny. I'm sure it's still all over the place. If you haven't found it, look up Aviation Gin. Father's Day, I think it's Father's Day ad where he's making a drink, and it's very funny. It's just about how kids drive you nuts and make you drink, basically, is the joke. But it's great, and he's great in it, and he's selling a product. Now, granted, he's got that. I think did he sell it, or does he still?
I think he sold it. Yeah.
Okay, but he still does
the ads though.
Still does the ads, and it's great. I mean, does he look down on that? It's the funniest thing he's going to do until the next Deadpool, spot.
Yeah.
Or spot.
One of the funniest commercials I've seen, or skits or whatever, is when Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds were going to do a commercial for each other, because like he owned Aviation Gin, and I think Hugh Jackman owned like some coffee company that's like saving the world one cup of coffee at a time and whatnot. And obviously they knew what they were doing. This was the whole shtick. Ryan Reynolds makes this great commercial for Hugh Jackman, Man of the Year, saving hearts and minds through his coffee brand. And then Hugh Jackman, because they've had this ongoing feud about, who was People Magazine's best looking man in the world. Hugh Jackman's just like sitting at a table, and he turns the gin sideways. He's like, yeah, I guess I drink this shit. And it's like, it's so funny, the juxtaposition of like Ryan Reynolds, glowing review of Hugh Jackman's company, and then Hugh Jackman's like, yeah, Aviation Gin, I guess I drink this shit. And he like turns the bottles on. It's so good.
If you've got people who are into celebrities, with everything that they bring to it, all the positive they bring to it, who are into it, it's like having a superpower. It's great. Like if you've got a good script and they're, trying to make it work or whatever. The thing with doing it, again, if sometimes you be handed somebody and they're not into it, and then you still have to make it work. You don't get, a freebie because you didn't pick them. So
right.
That's the thing. Yeah. What else?
Well, let me ask you this. What, coming out of COVID, we're filming this just after June 15th. Yeah. So the mask mandate is off. And, you mentioned to me, because we're going to be doing Alone here soon, that you're like back to writing a lot and not just focusing on the fun project of the podcast. What's the pinnacle for Bob, or what are you really looking forward? Maybe that's a societal thing. Maybe that's a job you're going to be working on. Maybe it's a script you worked on. Like what's Bob looking forward to?
Oh gosh. If somebody wants to buy my any of my screenplays or sitcoms that sit around, it's funny. I was sitting around with another writer the other day, and he's wrapping up on Conan, and he said he's got sitcoms going out, and he goes, yeah, you always hear the same thing. It's like it's hysterical, and then it doesn't get bought because at some point, if you're not selling stuff, it's whatever. I love doing the podcast and trying to build it into something, because it's no one cannot buy that. It's you just put it, as you just put that out there, and if enough people like it, and it's building, and I'm getting more talent to work with, and trying to expand it. I may expand it to doing, 2 sketches a week, or, whatever. That's something I would love to have that happen on its own. I loved, my favorite thing I would ever do in my career was to be in a recording studio doing radio. I love to do it. Being on a TV set, there's a lot more working parts to it, and I liked it a lot, but you're playing a lot of defense, and you don't get to play as much with let's try this, let's try that. And you usually have some nervous person saying, this one has to be good. Oh, as opposed to the other ones we just screwed up on purpose. I'd love to, I've got I won't go to minute, but I've got a movie script that I like a lot that was a Raging Bull thing. We'll talk about it later on. It takes too long to get into. But mostly comedic stuff. But either a sitcom. I'll always do advertising because I don't really look at that as a defining line between, I like to do comedy and TV or whatever, and I'll be done with advertising. No, if somebody calls me up and something's fun and they're paying for it, it's like, absolutely. I like to do it. I'd like to think I'm good at it by now.
$20 is $20.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So I'd say, yeah, but I would love it because it's unique and it's building, and we're going to cross the threshold in listeners downloads pretty soon. That the show is fun, and I'm getting a lot of enough positive stuff from people who haven't heard it before or whatever. I had a friend who actually went back and listened to everything from the beginning, and I was like, Jesus, he was on vacation, in fairness. But you start to get, there's enough stuff up there that I can repost something from earlier that somebody hasn't heard or whatever. So I'm liking that, but it's like any kind of funny thing that gets, it's like, I like to get paid for that. Like you get paid for advertising, but it's like, we'll see. I think it's going to come. I'm lining up with good people. So
that's awesome, man. Well, we'd love to have you back. Like whenever the podcast starts hitting 10, 20,000 downloads and you got big boy sponsors, or you sell a script and your movie's going to be live. We'd love to have you back on, man. This stuff fascinates me. Anything about marketing or comedy, because I have no chops for that whatsoever. It just really fascinates me. So I appreciate the conversation, man. We really want to have you back.
Very good. It's been a pleasure being here. I love the setup. Well, people can kind of get a. This is. I asked for this logo.
Yeah,
we're gonna get a logo made for Fallout Lounge that I can hang on the wall like this. I like the setup. I was mentioning it. This reminds me of what I understand about Mark Maron doing it in his garage. He probably doesn't do it anymore, but I like the whole setup. How long did it take you to do this?
Well, it took mostly Chris time to do it because I don't have time. I still got to do mortgages 50, 60 hours a week. So probably took Chris about a week or two to set it up. And then, the thing that's crazy is like, every week we find some new cord that we need. We've probably spent thousands of dollars on cords and dongles and adapters, and like there's always some bullshit cord we need or improving upon. So it's a work in progress, but we're really proud of it.
I'm seeing some of the Marvel. So you like I'm
a nerd. I like comics. I like sci-fi.
Do you watch Harley Quinn?
Yes.
I'm friends with one of the guys, Patrick Schumacher, who's one of Patrick Schumacher and Justin Halpern. And I need to send Patrick a note. Are you familiar with this whole thing about Batman not going down on women? Have you heard about this?
No, this is amazing.
Okay.
Because Batman's my favorite superhero, so anything.
Well, you need to. It's been a thing this past week where something bubbles up on the internet and you see it once and you don't think anything of it, and you see it 2 more times and you're like, I need to Google this and see what's going on.
Right.
It turns out, I think on this show, I don't know for sure. Is Harley Quinn, is that DC?
Yeah, DC.
Okay. All right. Batman shows up, and there's talk about him having sex with Catwoman and going down on Catwoman. And DC says superheroes don't. Either Batman doesn't do that, or superheroes don't do it. Clearly, some do. Like the original Deadpool.
So wait, this is a
thing. This
is like a press release from DC that Batman doesn't go down.
Not a press release. It got out that, and again,
this is good.
I can find it for the horseman, but they just said Batman doesn't eat pussy. He does not. I mean, he's got the cowl. He's got the it's like you think it's open.
Yeah.
He would.
Oh man,
this chose to.
This is gonna be the title of this episode. Batman doesn't eat pussy.
Yes, but it's like a thing, and I just noticed, you might be a fan, but it's like that's this week's thing in the comic world. People questioning whether the Caped Crusader should eat pussy, should not eat pussy, where they come down on whether he does or not. But DC said, please don't put that in your show. Don't put that in your show.
Oh man, that's
it's that we sell consumer toys for heroes. It's hard to sell a toy if Batman is also going down on someone.
Well, the toy wouldn't be going down on anybody, right? The toy would not be.
Oh, this is so so good.
Yeah.
By the way, my productivity for tomorrow at work has been completely shot because now all I'm going to be doing is reading about Batman. Does he or does he not go down on women?
Well, at this point, he doesn't. But the question is, do you think he should, or do you think, does the Cape Crusader not?
If it was Harley Quinn, I think I'm going with a yes.
Yes, many would. I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, the decision has been made. We were talking about what corporations do. DC is they've got to watch the whole brand or whatever. That's what they decided. You don't have to agree with it. It's their company. I'm guessing that Patrick and Justin don't agree with it, but they are happy to have a show and they're thrilled to be on and they'll go with whatever.
This is amazing.
Patrick's he's got a great sense of humor and he's very dry, and I think he realized that this is a funny thing to talk about outside of the show.
I'm gonna have to interview him for the show, and this is gonna be a 2-hour podcast on superheroes and their sexual.
Oh my
proclivities.
God! Yeah, I'll set you up.
Oh, awesome! All right, Bob, we'll have you back soon, man. Thanks so much for being on.
Thank you so much. It's very fun.
Very fun.
Okay, thank you, Chris.